Share screen. Yeah. Okay. Second on the renewable energy in China. Yeah. Wind power. So let's look at the current situation of wind power in China first. Come on, play. Wrong one. Sorry. Go back one step. This one. Yep. Well, I didn't know Sweden was so much in energy, but now it's the United States. China is now number 4, number 5. China is now catching up, number 2 now. Okay, so that was China's growth.
这是云南省昆明县高登滩风力发电工程项目，我们唐昊大舰承接的是叶片运输。
52.4 meters long, the wind turbine blade. And they use this truck.
我们公司安排了3辆联合卡车，3辆车一起上山，一次能拉1头。
So 3 trucks, each with 1 blade. That means all the 3 blades are transported in one go with 3 trucks.
们这个风电运输山路路况比较复杂，弯急坡陡，林崖连续弯道以及连续上下坡，路两边还都是村庄。我们这个路况呢，需要我们发动机的动力比较强劲，差速比较大，低速有力。总之就是一句话，需要我们的车辆结实耐用。
因为我们人生可是车大件，必须要道路通畅，所以需要提前到前方施工道路。
道路狭窄，路况复杂，两边建筑物太多，需要随时操纵液压杆、水叶片、升降、传暖，主要是为了躲避高压电缆、山体树木、房屋和其他建筑物。
我们这个工程呀，车辆也很多，能够上我们这种复杂山路的这个道路的，也只有这个联合卡车。他们需要牵引，还要前边推、后边推、前边拉，需要2个装载机、5菱装载机往上拉。我们的联合卡车有一个最好的优点，就是不管再陡的坡，我们能上去，是坡我就能上去。用的效果感觉的特别的好。
Oh, not yet. Go back. Play. The play.
As the Chinese economy has grown, so has its pollution rate. And with the eyes of the world watching China just to see how it's going to lower its carbon emissions, the Chinese government, as well as the wind power industry, have made giant strides at dealing with lowering its emissions. On today's show, we're going to find out just how China's become a leader in wind power and speak to experts in the field to find out how this technology works and truly how they're dealing with the future and what are the challenges facing this green, clean energy. The world is racing to decrease global warming and lower CO2 emissions. China's at the forefront of trying to gradually lower its reliance on coal and develop alternative energy resources like wind. China relies on coal for approximately 80% of its energy. The government expects to increase non-fossil-based energy sources to 15% of total energy consumption by 2020, with wind power playing a major role. At present, fossil-based energy sources supply the majority of the country's total energy consumption. China is the leading global consumer of coal. As the country rapidly pushes towards development, it has reached a shocking production level of coal, as well as consumption levels of coal-derived electricity.
Five years ago, 2004, we started doing analysis on global markets for what we felt were the next emerging markets for wind energy as a sector. And clearly, India and China were both growing sectors. China more particularly because in 2006, they initiated the renewable energy law, and they were a little ahead of what India was going to do. So in 2005, we made investments here in wind energy in Inner Mongolia.
Talk to me about this now. Gerald Page is the managing director of Equinox Energy Partners, based out of Beijing. He is dedicated to advancing the interests of alternative energy and clean tech companies, as well as establishing global support for the greening of China through his direct involvement in NGOs and the Equinox network of government and institutional contacts. Mr. Page is a regular guest speaker at global energy conferences.
Some of these projects, like Norfolk here, is 5,000 megawatt project. In the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a substantial amount of money invested into the sector. I think a lot more than the rest of the world recognizes or is reported in the rest of the world in the greening of China. Many, many programs to stimulate green growth. In fact, the stimulus package that was announced a year and a half ago, $586 billion, $221 billion, or 35% of that is dedicated to the green sector.
It gave the Chinese state-owned commercial banks a clear signal that additional investment, accelerated investment in infrastructure was a desirable thing to do over 2009 and 2010.
So a lot of that money has flowed down into various provinces to stimulate great programs in building sustainability and green and clean tech programs for the greening of China. So I think it's fantastic here, real opportunity.
As an example of China's drive to create green technology development, it is setting up economic development zones like that of the city of Baoding, which is located in Hebei province. It is a pilot city for renewable energy situated just 100 kilometers away from the capital city of Beijing. Currently, the 3 economic pillars for Baoding are the solar PV industry, wind power, and energy efficiency industries. This focus has given the city's new energy economy a strong push in infrastructure development for building a low-carbon future.
开发区的经济支柱主要以新能源和智能电网产品为主的这些生产企业，这些骨干企业都在国内、国际占有举足轻重的地位。我们光伏行业的产品的产量占世界产量的10%以上，我们中航汇通的叶片占国内市场份额的40%以上，所以说我们这些企业都有一定的产业和技术的优势。
Simply stated, utilizing wind to turn the blades of a turbine which generates electricity produces no harmful emissions in the process, unlike coal, which releases high levels of carbon into the atmosphere. Chinese enterprises have mastered advanced off-grid wind turbine generation technology through technology transfer from foreign companies. There are two kinds of utilization which must be addressed in any discussion of wind-powered developments: off-grid and in-grid. Off-grid utilization is primarily as an independent power operation system, often in remote regions. The power generation capacity of a single off-grid generator ranges from 100 watts to 10 kilowatts. In-grid power is integrated within conventional power grids, providing the most economical and large-scale utilization of wind power.
我们现在有60平方公里，远期有130平方公里的发展空间，作为我们新能源企业入驻的基本条件。另外，保定呢还有优良的人力资源，保定有大学13所，其中最著名的适合于新能源发展的华北电力大学。这个学校就建有中国唯一的新能源可再生能源学院，他们专为新能源培养相关的人才并且我们保定呢原来有一定的工业基础，有好多成熟的掌握技术的一些蓝领的工人。
We're in this huge facility creating wind turbine energy power. It is incredible to watch how big these engines are, and there's line after line after line of all of these incredible engines. It is really remarkable. I can't imagine how heavy it must be and what you must do to have to create this and build a whole field of wind power. Gojin is the largest supplier of wind energy in all of China. In 2009, China overtook the United States in renewable energy investments for the first time ever. China put $34.6 billion into renewable energy projects, mostly wind farms. Wind energy and solar power are the most popular renewables, nabbing billions of dollars of investment. These numbers have also been translated into millions of new jobs in green technology. We're here at Gojin United Power, a major wind technology supplier for all of China. Everything you're seeing manufactured here is for supply and for wind energy in northern China. These turbines are amazingly huge. This is the first subsidiary of Gojin who have trained everyone else in wind technology. Impressive. It has been recently announced that China's National Energy Administration has developed a new energy plan for 2011 to 2020, which will invest 5 trillion RMB in a range of renewable and low-carbon energy sources, including wind technologies.
在一个地方建厂，主要考虑几个方面的条件。第一个是当地的投资环境，这里面包括一个用工环境，还有当地的基础设施以及配套的产业。第二一个是当地政府的支持，比如在税收、土地方面的支持。第三个是我们的考虑到风机的一个运输成本。那么为什么我们选择在保定呢？那么保定首先在保定在用地上给予了这公司的一个大力支持，另外在税收等方面创造一个良好的环境。同时保定这个基地距离中国的很多的风场的距离很近，能够节约一些运输成本。
Massive investment in wind energy has occurred, but as important is the creation of regulations and standards in green technology by the Chinese government as well as industry. This will increase the reliability and reputation of Chinese wind technology globally.
中国呢，严格了准入的条件，我觉着这对于我们发展是有好处的。这样呢，可以让我们这些有技术实力、有核心竞争力、产品质量过硬的大型企业大型产业集聚区得以发展，而防止一哄而上， 防止一些不具备生产条件的企业去介入新能源，最后造成新能源盲目发展，甚至是会造成发展新能源的同时，而在挥霍和浪费我们的能源。
China has shown continued efforts in developing a local industry and market for wind power. Technological advancements, domestic production to lower costs, and the policy structure are all required for a stable and thriving market. The recently passed renewable energy law will help, but further efforts to create the Chinese wind power industry need to be continued to push for greater regulations and higher standards. Local turbine companies now hold 80% of the Chinese market, which less than a decade ago was dominated by global wind companies such as Vestas, GE, and Spain's Gamesa. China now has more than 80 complete set manufacturers, 50 turbine blade manufacturers, 20 generator manufacturers, more than 10 converter manufacturers, and nearly 100 turbine tower manufacturers. Some domestic products, especially generator components, have entered the international marketplace, and it is estimated that China will become the world's leading wind power equipment manufacturer by 2015.
State governments now providing capital and to selected turbine manufacturers that have proven that their technology is viable and sustainable and meets international standards, to give them the capital and the financial support to allow them to export and compete in the world. Chinese turbines are at least 20% below the prices of international turbines that are built on a euro-based dollar in Europe and elsewhere.
Chinese wind industry manufacturers have already established international sales teams and are actively bidding for contracts overseas. The process is now underway to not only supply the national wind market, but to look for other international opportunities. China's biggest wind turbine manufacturer and the world's number 3, Sinovel, exported 10 wind turbines of 1.5 megawatts each to India last year.
Okay, we will look at the offshore wind turbines as well. Oh. Come on. Go back. Okay, to summarize, in the 30th Energy Technology Innovation Plan, each turbine will increase its capacity from whatever to between 8 and 10 megawatts. And then they want to install about 210 gigawatts of grid-connected wind power by 2020. So 2 years ago, it was 187 gigawatts. But given the COVID-19 in 2020, I don't know whether they will be able to achieve this goal. China is now the world leader in production, export, and installation of solar panels, turbines, batteries, electric vehicles, etc. And it aims to convert all energy. It aims to have produced 50% of its energy from non-fossil sources. So that will include nuclear and renewables by 2030. So there is another 10 years to go. Whether they can achieve that, we don't know. So that's my presentation, and then we'll stop the share, and then we'll have discussion.
It wasn't supposed to happen.
But I'm going to go right back to the movable graph you showed at the beginning of countries, various countries. Pardon my parochialism, but it was fascinating to watch Australia. Australia was high on the list and dropped dramatically when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister, then up a little bit under Turnbull, so quite interesting. One thing I didn't look at, and I should have, can you tell me, Albert, where was India on that list?
Pretty low.
Was it?
Yeah.
Despite its large population.
Despite its large population and the availability of a lot of wind. Actually, for India, I think it is better for them to develop hydro at the top end, the upstream. So they shouldn't get into difficulties with China. If these two countries cooperate, India has a lot of potential. But there is a little bit of border disputes going on for the last couple of months maybe.
Oh yes.
For years and years.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think India need to adjust its mentality and say, well, this is cooperation rather than competition. But unfortunately, India is very competitive. They are challenging China all the way to everything. So it's not good for cooperation. Just like Australia here, we are so stupid, our politicians. Okay.
Don't forget, India, as far as border disputes go, the border dispute with Pakistan is more important to the Indians than the border dispute with China. They both exist, but India considers Pakistan more of a inverted commas enemy.
I think the world should convert to a mentality where cooperation is more important than competitions. But unfortunately, it's not going that way until I think maybe after November when U.S. president changed.
I hope you're right.
Well, unfortunately, no. Do you know something called Yiwu Index? No?
EV.
Yiwu. Yiwu. Yiwu is a small town in the Zhejiang province in China. It is the world capital of small merchandise. Your Christmas lights, your garden lights, everything small coming from that little town. And they have an index. It's called U.S. Presidential Election Index. How they know which candidate will win? But they correctly predicted Donald Trump will win in 2016, where everyone in the world is still guessing. Well, the method is by looking at how much order comes from the Trump camp compared with Hillary. The more order coming from the Trumps, that means the more likely Trumps will win. Because after all, it is driven by funding. You will have...
Wait, go forward. What's going to happen this year?
This year, Trump's order is about 60% more than Biden's. So they are predicting Trump to win.
I think if Trump loses, there's going to be a lot of disorder because he'll ferment it.
Scary idea.
Absolutely. If he loses, he will act like a third world dictator and won't accept the results. He's already telling us all that. We know that he's going to do that. He doesn't make a secret of it.
Well,
you think he'll get the army on side?
Sorry?
You think he could get the army on side and create a coup?
Ooh, that is a wild guess. We don't know.
I say no. But what I thought was interesting, Albert, was with those, as was referred, those moving graphs, between 2000 and let's say 2003, between 2003 and I guess just about now, is a period of around 20 years when the U.S. has poured immense treasure and energy into these wars in the Middle East. And this is the time when, of course, there's a lot of momentum growing. So inertia is continuing in the same direction in Chinese internal development in its own country. And we see the U.S. doing exactly the opposite, wasting all their resources, their wealth, in fighting some wars that it's not quite, anyway, not clear in my mind exactly what they want to accomplish there. And I think we see the results of internal investment, which of course is what our own government here in Australia is telling us that we must do now, and not spend our time participating as we have done, which I regard as a vanity project of John Howard's, actually, involved in these wars in the Middle East.
Now, for Australia, for our own defense, we only need Navy because we are a big island. So you have a strong Navy, that's it. We don't need submarines. We just need a on the surface Navy force to show the pirates that you don't.
But we don't know those ridiculous French submarines because we can do it all by drones.
Yes.
Susan, getting back to what you said earlier, China, through its Belt and Roads policy, is now definitely going out to the rest of the world.
Oh, yes.
Of course, under Trump, Make America Great Again, we're seeing more parochialism than we've seen from America for a long time.
But
still fighting wars all around the world.
Exactly.
They're talking about getting out of. They're talking about getting out of Iraq and Iran
and going into Iran.
Well,
when was the last time America won a war?
Last
war America won?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question.
That's
yeah.
the one in it.
Well,
Americans won a lot of battles, but lost most of the wars.
I mean, up until the end of the Second World War, Americans used to say, "We have not ever lost a war." Well, I can't say that these days.
No.
Well,
But they're in wars that they shouldn't have even been in, had no relevance to them.
I think countries should start looking at how to enrich our own citizens rather than provoking other countries.
Well, the
For
problem
example,
is we've got a
looking
lot of armaments. What are we going to do with them if we don't have a war?
Yeah. What are we going to do with all the armaments? We don't have wars.
We've got to have a war. Not only to help get the economy going again afterwards.
Plenty of disasters for our military forces to help out in. So
Yeah.
they're helping out with the disasters.
Well, for example, our militaries can be used in California to fight their forest fire.
Yep.
I'll catch the virus.
Well, they could have helped us with our virus if we'd have used them properly.
Well,
there is
our government, the Victoria government, didn't know that they can use the ADF. I don't know whether it's an excuse or what. So dumb.
I didn't realize there were so many people as cynical as me around.
But anyway, the Chinese got the opportunity to focus on itself after the 9/11. The American changed towards the terrorists, and that gave China a briefing period where it can focus on its own work. And you see most of the technological developments in China occurs in the last 10 or 20 years. Before that, before 9/11, China remained as a low-tech country, being the world's manufacturer. Technology come from outside of China, and then they just do the assembly. But once the American turned into war, that gives Chinese the opportunity to develop the technology. So, for example, sorry,
the
Sue?
death of dinosaurs. It's a bit like the mammals were able to flourish after the death of the dinosaurs.
Yep. We are going to see the deaths of the dinosaur, which is United States. And
It's not going to be a pretty death, though. It's not going to be nice.
And then we will see that Mammo China coming up.
Actually,
Yes, they need a war.
I think
guns.
Chinese are the country is looking outside itself now as well, and I'll be interested when this group talks about Australia's relations with China and the difficulty that Australia has, because of course it still has a lot of loyalty to its older alliances, and yet of course it has the economic relationship with China. I thought it was interesting that when yesterday, I think it was, ScoMo was talking about, we're going to get this vaccine and we're going to share it with the Pacific. Well, of course we are, because if we don't, the Chinese will.
Yeah.
So our altruism, not that we have any to share yet, but our altruism is actually, I think, based in many respects on our strategic outlook for the South Pacific.
Cynical.
Well, in terms of the vaccine development, the WHO, the World Health Organization, identified 6 vaccines in the late stage of development. And that means in the third stage of human trial. Out of that 6, 3 come from China. The one of the leading one in China is now doing a 50,000 people test. With a lot of help from the Middle East countries. So they are giving out. And the indication of price has come out now. The the price indication is that it will be around 1,000 yuan for 2 injections, about 2 weeks apart to 1 month apart. So that will be probably the market price. But like here, if the vaccines are available, we Australian will get a free vaccines because our government is going to pay for it. But whether it's mandatory, I don't know.
It won't be mandatory.
Will they accept Chinese vaccines, do you think?
Sorry again?
Do you think Australia is going to accept the Chinese vaccines?
No, they are looking forward to the Oxford vaccine from England.
Mm.
And I think they will be about 6 times more expensive than the Chinese.
Mm.
So
do you think it's a natural suspicion that we've got the Chinese vaccines, or why isn't it being on the cards or talked about?
Why has it never been talked about? Yes.
No.
Well, the Chinese got this virus first, okay? So they are aware of the COVID-19 much earlier than the other countries, and therefore to them developing the vaccine is priority. So they started developing the vaccine once the genome is sequenced. So that will be starting in early July this year. So I think in China about 20 different teams actually start working on it independently. And now 3 of them is now in the final stage of testing.
Why isn't China looking at why isn't Australia looking at Chinese vaccines as well?
You ask our politicians.
Probably don't need to.
Because I think our politicians is for example, back to the renewables, we got a lot of opportunities in terms of developing renewables in Australia. We got a huge hot spot in the middle of China. In the middle of Australia. And that is very good for developing solar energy. For example, solar, we don't need to develop photovoltaic. We don't need convert into electricity. We can use our middle as thermal energy, solar thermal energy, and that will produce a lot of energy, and that should propel us into very good future. But our politician is not thinking that way. That's the problem. I think I have talked about the solar chimney. That means we build a lot tall chimney, and then around the chimney we build a large greenhouse. So the heat trapped by the greenhouse will be hot enough to pass through the chimney, and that chimney can be used to dry turbines and therefore produce energy. That is thermal solar energy converted into electricity through turbines. That would be so much more efficient.
Do you think,
Albert, when you generate green energy, you need to that facility like solar panels or whatever facility need to be near to the grid to transmit it back to the main city. So if it's in the middle of Australia, how do we transmit it back to the capital city or the populated area?
Well,
it's too much infrastructure to build, isn't it?
There will be
right.
some infrastructure
You're
to
right.
build, but the good thing about that is because it is almost empty, so we don't have the problem of buying the land back, and then we can just build. So
But
building
you talk
it,
about miles and miles and kilometers of cable.
yeah. At the
No,
moment,
maintenance.
the best energy transmission is high voltage DC transmission. High voltage DC transmission is now being developed in China as well, and China has already developed a grid of 5 horizontal, 5 vertical grid of high voltage DC transmission, and they are running at about 1 million volts. They are very efficient. So I think
so you have to ship the DC battery back to the main city, isn't it, or the populated area?
And of course there is challenges, but that challenge itself can drive our economy.
And we already have pipe energy transmission across the country under the Tasman Sea. I don't actually see the transmission as much of a problem as this idea that we have to have battery storage or the actual setup of the energy capture. I guess I would compare that to gas here in Australia, where we've put pipelines all over the country. So I don't really see that as big a problem as the willpower to actually make it happen.
Yeah. You have the willpower, have the political power, then it will happen. Because technology is there. Technology is not.
I think the incentive might come from the fact that there's nobody sort of out there like the big oil magnates that have a lot of say in the running of anything, and they're able to make millions. Where are they going to get their millions? By using solar energy?
Well, I think at the moment the aviation is down. Nobody is traveling by air, but I think the airplanes need to be redesigned to use liquid hydrogen. Yes. Because liquid hydrogen has much higher energy capacity than per kilogram than the gasoline they are using at the moment. So that would be hydrogen is almost unlimited. We just have to get it from our seawater. So I think if Australia want to get into this energy economy in the future, especially renewable energy economy, we got a chance by producing liquid hydrogen and then selling liquid hydrogen to the rest of the world.
And if I could just characterize this on two levels, there's this huge political, social debate. We've got to have coal because we've got to have jobs. We've got to have coal because we've got to export it. We've got to, we're never going to have coal again. We will always need baseload power. But in fact, underneath that political debate, there is actually a lot of development of renewable energy systems going on here in Australia. They just need a bit of push from government. And I think if we can acknowledge that we need a baseload, whatever level that is, I think even the video today on China said right now, or at the time it was made, it might have been a few years old, at that time, coal-fired electricity was 80% of the mix.
Yeah.
But the goal is to bring it down, and that's the same here. Yeah. And our coal industry is, at the same time they're fighting this rearguard action, they're also investing in renewable energy. So in fact, it's not quite as bleak a picture as it comes across if you watch the news media, especially Sky News.
Well, I think we Australia need a good discussion. I think on several levels. Where should our economy going? In what direction? What kind of position Australia should take in the world stage? Are we going to always stick to the Western allies, or should we integrate into the Pacific region, into our Asian neighbors? If we decide to integrate into our Asian neighbors, then we might have to give up some Western allies and start rethinking what we should do in the region, because the world is changing. We just cannot stick to the old mindset.
It's interesting to see how Europe is changing, because Europe, like other parts of what used to be called the Pax Americana, has been thrown off in the Trump era, and so that conglomeration, if I call it that group, has recognized that they have to forge new relationships, and we see them doing that.
Yeah.
So
and so on one hand, the re-election of Trump might be dangerous, but on the other hand, that will give the Europe and China another opportunity.
Yes.
Getting back to what you said, Albert, about Australia's alliances. Look, we've been talking about building up our alliance with the Pacific and with Asia for 30, 40 years, and nothing has really happened. And it won't happen in my lifetime. It won't happen in the lifetime of the next generation. We'll talk about it. We'll continue to talk about it, but we will continue to
well, it depends on
to
whether
have
there's
major alliances with places that we've had for the last 100 years.
Well, now looking at China, for almost 300 years, China is considered backwards, not developed, have been almost colonized. Then China, within 40 years, starting from the death of Mao Zedong, things change. So in 40 years, see the change in China. So if we have Australia have this change in mentality, and in 40 years or 20 years, we can do a lot of things, just like China. We need a good leader.
See it. I can't see it happening.
Yeah, I can't see it happening because
I'm not saying what I'm not saying it's right. Don't get me wrong, but I can't see it happening.
Excuse me. I think that is a basic mental resistance for the Western people who always have bad impression to the Eastern one.
Yeah, that mentality have to change. We need to educate the world that it is a world where everybody can contribute, from the West, from the East, and then we better cooperate rather than compete.
Because in the Western,
not going to happen in our lifetime.
Well, yeah, it could be, but in case of the people, why China has been a 300-year pull, and then catch up within the 40 year, and that can over advance to the Western one, because the people have been suffer for more than 300 years. And have been bullying it around for a lot of things. You see that you can see that in case of technology on the 5G, in case of GPS, in case of sky station, how many billion of Chinese yen or dollar have been just run on the river, and even cannot get into to sit down to discuss, and have been kicked out from there. And that kind of a thing, people in the Western still sitting on a very high view, and are not just like in the British one said, it's down on earth to teach you. They are not doing anything. And in case of English, right now still not down on earth, still sitting on a high level of thing and looking at everything.
Well,
talking back again, that for the vaccine, for this COVID, China has been testing for the second vaccine already, and the third is coming soon. And then the Chinese vaccine have been agreed and produced in Indonesia, and that Indonesia is coming up for temporary, may not be just going anywhere else. And then the Oxford one still in case in the air, in the cloud. So no one know what is it.
And then the people in here from the church, then there's a spiritual again that cannot be accepted. So this kind of the basic one is quite different than the one which have been suffered for quite long. They don't appreciate that way.
Okay, so thank you for coming. So we will see you next week then.
Don't go yet.
Okay.
Albert, can you put on the chat before you close this that reference that you gave us last week? I didn't get to write it down, and I didn't get an email from you.
Oh, I forgot to send the email. But anyway, I will search it and then we'll put it on the chat again.
That one is you use Abacus Bank, and that's it.
Abacus, yes.
Abacus Bank, yeah.
You just check the Abacus Bank, and then the whole thing will coming up. You know the Abacus, the calculator?
Yes, yes.
And that's it. That is the name.
Yeah.
I read it. Quite interesting.
I'm just going to put this onto chat now.
Yeah, I'm going to put it onto the chat now. So just before we go,